Hi guys, good morning. Today's assignment is about the Mexican-American War. And I just wanted to provide a brief overview of that war to help you better understand the reading and today's assignment. So let's just go ahead and get started. So for us to understand a little bit of the context, we have to understand the president at the time. His name was James Polk, and he wanted to expand the United States. He was able to expand the United States in terms of Oregon and also Texas, but we have to understand that he wanted to expand as much as possible. Initially, what he wanted to do was to actually buy pieces of land from Mexico that included California and New Mexico and present-day Arizona. However, Mexico was not interested in doing anything with the United States, as Mexico was upset at the United States because of its involvement with Texas and the annexation of Texas. So let's talk about Texas briefly. Texas was its own republic for approximately 10 years, and they had been wanting to join the United States. The United States, however, was very hesitant in annexing Texas and making it a state or a territory for that matter because of two reasons. Number one, the United States had a balance between slave states and free states, and adding Texas would mean that that balance would no longer exist because Texas wanted to be a slave state. In addition, Mexico hadn't fully recognized Texas as being an independent country. Mexico still wanted to essentially gain back Texas because well, first of all, they just didn't want to accept the fact that Texas was no longer part of their territory. So the United States said, look, if we add Texas, we're going to create this unbalance of slave states, but then also we're going to get Mexico very angry, and we don't want to do that at this time. So it was really controversial. But President Tyler, on the last day that he was in office, he actually signed a bill that would essentially annex Texas, and he forwarded to the House of Representatives on the last day that he was in office. The very next day, the new president, James Polk, was his first day in office, and he encouraged Texas to accept, and therefore, on February 19th, 1846, a few months later, it was when Texas actually became a part of the United States. Of course, this created tensions with Mexico, and it worsened the relationship that we had with them. So at this point, the biggest issue was um, the border, the border of both Mexico and the United States. Mexico and Texans believe that the Rio Grande, which is this line here, was the actual border. However, the Mexicans said no, the Nueces River is going to be the border. So all of this area in red here was disputed territory. And both armies were patrolling this area, both the US Army and the Mexican Army, which of course was a recipe for disaster. So what happens is on April 25th, both armies were patrolling the Rio Grande, and there was a scuffle. Somehow something happened, and the Mexican army fired upon the American army. This resulted in having 16 troops, US troops, wounded or killed, and it really, really upset the Americans. President Polk finally had his excuse to go to war with Mexico. He said, look, they've attacked us. They've attacked us on our soil, and they've attacked us in a way that ended up killing American soldiers or shedding their blood. Therefore, 2 days later, after that speech, Congress declared war on Mexico. So what ends up happening is that the United States is able to pretty easily gain control of California and New Mexico. These areas were not as populated or as heavily defended by Mexican soldiers, and those areas fall pretty easily to the United States. What the U.S. Army later does is they move deeper into Mexico. They capture cities in Monterrey and eventually Veracruz, and then the capital city, Mexico City, in September of 1847. Now, if you notice here, I have an image of this. These are known as the Niños Héroes, or as the children that are heroes, as they are formally they are known to have defended the Mexican flag at what is known as the Battle of Chapultepec. These were actual children. They were not like grown soldiers. There were cadets in the army, in the Mexican army. And what happened was they really wanted to defend their country. So they are seen in Mexico as heroes, and they're actually have a patriotic day in Mexico in which they honor them. They were defending the Mexican flag, and legend has it that one of them, his name was Juan Escutia, he actually wrapped himself in the Mexican flag and jumped over this castle to prevent the flag from being taken by US forces. And they are seen, like I said, as national heroes. So Mexico City is eventually captured, and in 1848, the war officially ends with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. What happens is Mexico agrees to give up a lot of territory. This is known as the Mexican Cession, and the United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million. In addition to that, the United States agreed to protect any Mexicans that were still living in those areas in California, in New Mexico, and give them full citizenship and give them rights such as land rights. Maybe they already had land, they were able to keep those pieces of land. However, those things didn't actually happen as promised by the United States, because a lot of the times they would just end up taking the territory that was rightfully theirs. They would not recognize their deeds. They would not recognize the fact that it was written in Spanish, and a lot of injustices occurred with those Mexican people that were still living in the new area. And here's a map of the territory that was actually given up during this war. Eventually, we purchased this area down here where Tucson is, known as the Gadsden Purchase, which I believe is also in your reading. But this Mexican Cession here was what actually was an outcome of the Mexican-American War. All right, guys, I hope you have a good day, and please study up on this, as this will be on the quiz on Friday. So make sure that you know this. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or stop by office hours.